This is a great facility. I have to tell you that I was very impressed when I came in, and it's great to see investment in education. And so my hat's off to Lansing Community College for such a wonderful venue. And today, hopefully I can add to what the provost said, because everything I'm going to talk about is going to lend itself towards really trying to change your thought process, okay? And thank you, George, for actually inviting me to do this. So the basis of the discussion is about 20 years of global experience that deals with construction management, and my focus is on trying to help us apply this to global construction operations a little bit. And I'm going to give you the caveat that most of this is just my opinion. I do have some citations in there, and it's really intended to be thought-provoking, okay? The other thing is it's not techie. If you want a techie, Sean's in the back of the room, okay? One of the things that I've been able to do, because it said technology applications was one of my areas of interest or research interest, it's really trying to figure out how technology can make my life easier. And when I say my life, I mean my life, the life of my workforce, the life of the people who report to me or work with me, my colleagues, right? So really, hopefully it'll help you think and consider some things, because you're going to have a lot of technical discussion over the next day and a half. So first of all, I'm going to give you some disclosures. I'm going to talk about what's important to construction, globalization, technology, all these things, the key buzzwords, sustainability. I'm going to talk a little bit about social media and give you some of my final thoughts. Some slides have more words than I'm going to say. I'm going to hit some of the highlights of those slides, and I know that there's copies of them on those great devices. By the way, you know, you can't go anywhere in the world now without a device, right? I have a slide that tells you how many devices are out there now, just to keep you up to speed. So, if you can tell, if I'm ever late for an appointment, it's because I couldn't get my hair dried. But some of the things that will, I wore this to school one day and I got beat up, so I stopped wearing that to school. I'm a planner. I like to set goals. I like to measure against those goals. One of the people I've often admired was Christopher Columbus. I've written a paper about Christopher Columbus because, you know, he didn't really have a measurement system. So when people asked him, when are we going to get there, he would tell them tomorrow, right? So what the amazing thing is, he was able to convince people to go with him, not knowing where on earth he was going, and he did it with borrowed money. Sounds like construction, doesn't it? Okay. I tend to be very patient. I scare doctors. My resting heart rate's in the 50s. I set off respiratory alarms every time I'm in the hospital and those kind of things. But anyway, hopefully that you can appreciate a sense of humor. And I tell you, I'm not a technical expert. And I will do my best, because I have to be done in less than an hour, okay? To sort of plant seeds, I want you to ask me, the one question somebody has to ask me is, what do you see as the biggest challenge with technology and globalization? And I forgot the other one, but I'll remember it before the end. So global construction operations is an interest of mine. I like to fish as well. Anybody know what kind of fish that is? Our Floridians should know. It's a wahoo, okay? It's a wahoo. I like building strategic collaborative partnerships, and the key word there is strategic. The second key word is collaborative, so it has to be something that's going to move both parties forward. It's got to be a win-win. I like strategic management, although I don't necessarily like strategic planning. Okay, because nowadays people who think if they're going to look 5 years in the future, you're looking way too far. I mean, I know companies I work with, we do strategic plans every year because of our changing market, all right? And you'll hear a little bit about total integrated services and BIM. I like the idea of being soup to nuts for a customer. So everything from land acquisition to finance through design, construction, maintenance, operations. So you can make a little bit of money on every piece of that pie, right? So to start off, I'm going to begin with what's really important to construction and show a couple of slides about the current market. The provost shared some of the things about the green or sustainable market and market shares that have changed in the recent years. So I'm using the World Construction Report from 2012 as a basis. It's by Davis Langdon, and everybody's familiar with that building. And I can't believe they didn't, I mean, if this is a 2012 picture, they didn't put the finished product on the front. But that's Burj Khalifa. It was Burj Dubai. If you ever get a chance, I strongly urge you to go to the observation tower that's about 1,700 feet up. And the elevator ride takes about a minute, okay? And it's amazing. It's amazing. The first time I saw it, I was actually standing down in that bottom right-hand corner when they were at about 120 floors. And they were doing 1 floor a week at that point. So over here where these little villas are. And surrounding the area, you know, is the mall and everything else. Couple of things. $4.6 trillion in 2011, which was down, was the global market, okay? Still not where we were in 2007. Some markets were actually showing increases since the recession, which is good. The main growing areas, everybody knows Africa, Asia Pacific, the Americas, Europe, and the Middle East. So to put that in a little bit more perspective, back then it was reported that China had, you know, $950, $960 billion. The U.S. had reported less than 800, and right now, this year, as of the April report, the U.S. is expected to do 860, which is good news, right? That's good news for our students, it's good news for the economy, and I can still tell you that some markets in the U.S. haven't seen it yet, right? They're still struggling to get out of the hole. So this shows basically the changes, percentage change, and everybody realizes that China is the big market, India is a big market, right? Everything from infrastructure to buildings, so it's very global. You'll notice the two real major downturns are shown in Italy and Spain, which is part of the Euro crisis, and here's showing what the growth patterns are supposed to look like based on the Davis report, okay? So if you'll notice, 2015, they're projecting that Asia is going to be 31% of the market, but wait another 5 years. They're projecting that 46% of the market globally is going to be in Asia, okay? Which is a great opportunity, but what that means from a global perspective is we've got to help our students have a global mindset, right? When they used to get out of school and there was 5 jobs waiting for them, right here within 25 miles of home, that doesn't work anymore. So when I started study abroad in 2006 for my building construction students, it was to get them to realize that there is a world outside Indiana. You know, it didn't stop at Lake Michigan, the Illinois border, Kentucky, and Ohio. That's what they basically thought the world was. But I also have to tell you, I have a special challenge because over half of our alumni in my program live in Indiana. Over half of the 5,000 alumni live in Indiana and work in Indiana, okay? So there's a mindset, there's a paradigm I'm having to work with. All right. So what's important to the construction people or construction managers? So I did a key performance indicator research study back in 2002. We did the study twice to make sure we got the right answer, and the same 6 key performance indicators came out. Units per man hour, dollars per unit, which basically are one and the same, right? Safety, total cost, on-time completion, quality control, and rework, okay? So those are the key performance indicators, and all of these can be impacted by technology, right? But it's getting the right pieces of technology in place, getting people in the right roles and responsibilities to actually affect any of these. All right. So what are the top qualifying factors for owners? So if you'll notice, I've highlighted in red the ones that are technology related, okay? Past project record, on-time performance is one, assets and liabilities. So part of that would be the investment in technology that the company's made. I'm not going to worry about bank references because hopefully we don't have any bad references at the bank, right? Safety performance, which match the construction folks, the construction professionals, but technology adoption. Okay? And I've got a slide a little bit later about being on the leading edge. Remember that. And process enablers. All right, so where do the process enablers come in? The idea is the perfect storm, and I'm borrowing this from Mark Bridgers, who works for FMI, and they do an annual study of owners with CMAA, and they started talking about the perfect storm. And the perfect storm really is how we manage owners' expectations, right? How do we manage anybody's expectations? And that is matching their owners, our clients, our colleagues, what their desires are with what the real outcomes are going to be. And where we do that is with enablers. Technology enablers is one of the ways that we can actually meet the desired outcomes. So we're going to talk a little bit about BIM and how I see BIM playing a key role in that. And open access to information is another way, all right? So we don't want this perfect storm to be like the George Clooney one, right? We don't want that kind of perfect storm, but we want to manage it. And managing expectations is a key part of the way we can use technology to do that. So the industry drivers, of course, everybody knows is bigger, faster, cheaper, more complex, and higher quality. And 15 years ago, if an owner came to us and said, this is what I want, we'd say, you're not going to get it. You're going to pay for one or the other, but you're not going to get them all, for the same price. But we've had to figure out how we can pull together teams, how we can use technology to actually do this. Bigger, faster, cheaper, more complex, higher quality, okay? There was a study done back when I was finishing my PhD in industrial and systems engineering, and we were comparing the decertification of nuclear disarmament type things versus how long it took us to do the bomb the first time, right? And it takes something like 8 to 12 years to even get through some of the process for a nuke plant, right? And we did the bomb in less than 2, right? So there's different motivating factors oftentimes. So nowadays we have to look at what the motivating factor is of our customers and try to make sure we can meet these needs, right? Cheaper. I guess the better way to say that is cost effective, right? All right. So this is one of my favorite slides. And it's one that I try to use with construction companies because when they're implementing a measurement system, they get a lot of data, right? And nowadays, with all the access that we have to data, the critical part is how we can turn the data into information and then make decisions, right? So with everybody having open access to all kinds of things nowadays, it becomes a challenge because then all of a sudden, people's interpretation of the data or the information that's available to them forces us all to have different opinions. And I'm a firm believer that if you really want to move forward any kind of organization, you have to learn to make decisions based on facts, right? So how do we get access to the data that we know are facts so that we can make the best educated decisions to make action and go forward? That's the critical thing. This kind of cycle plays in with technology all the time. Do you trust what you see and hear, all right? So one of the things that has really helped us be more productive, specifically in the construction industry, is the 24-hour working world, okay? And this isn't new. It's something that people like Fluor and Bechtel and Kellogg, Brown and Root have done for years, to where they basically do the pass-off of the work around the world with their different offices. Of course, in the old days, we would do these neat things called FTP, right? We'd FTP something to somebody in the next part of the world, and they'd work on it for 8 hours, and then they'd shift it around, right? This is the 24-hour world of 15, 20 years ago. Because really, information technology now means that we all can collaborate simultaneously, right? Which means that really the idea of the working world is really increased our hours of working, which I'm living this right now. And quite honestly, that's why I have bags under my eyes and I don't have any hair, okay? Is because in today's world, because of these technologies, we are accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anywhere on the planet. Technology's great, right? But technology, while it's an enabler, it's also a disabler, right? So finding the balance is critical here for everybody to maintain sanity, right? Because just recently, okay, I was in China 2 weeks ago. I got a project in Peru going on that's a global academic mission. And so I'm getting phone calls because there's a 12-hour difference, right? So by the time you get back to your hotel room after dinner, after doing work, right, 8 o'clock at night in China is 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or Eastern Daylight Time, but either one, Eastern Time. So that meant that my office is just starting up. So that really meant that whenever I'm in Asia, I'm probably working closer to an 18-hour day, which, you know, we're used to it in construction, right? So, but it happens. So while this is good, we also have to figure out how we can disconnect. So I was talking this morning with Mike and Jesse and saying that, you know, one of the things that you have to look for now is when you don't have any connectivity. So being in this room, there's no cell phone connection, right? I noticed that, so it's a blessing. So my phone won't ring, okay? But this makes us more productive, but we have to manage and balance it. And our students have to understand that because, you know, some of them were, one of the downsides, the challenge, I'm going to give you the answer. The answer to the question I told you to ask me. What's the biggest challenge with technology? Is making sure that our young people know how to communicate without it. Because if you say, have you talked to that person about that problem? And they go, oh, I sent them a text. Okay? Back here to this. Technology's great. That Peruvian project, we had communicated by email, we had Skyped, we'd done phone calls. I left Indianapolis on a Tuesday at noon, went down, had a meeting all day Wednesday in Lima, and flew back Wednesday night. Because this doesn't work on everything that we have to deal with. Meeting owners' expectations, owners' desires. So let's move to globalization. All right, so why do we want to take a global mindset? Global economy, right? Global society. I mean, I just look in this room and I can tell we've got a very diverse global population in the room, okay? Most of us need to have better cultural understanding, which when we think about diversity 20 years ago, it was diversity among, you know, race, and it was diversity among gender. And now we're talking about diversity among nationalities so that we have a better understanding so that we can really meet the global challenges that the world faces. Most construction projects that are of any size now have multinational teams, whether it's vendors or management people or specialty contractors. You don't just buy products from, you know, the Lowe's, the Home Depots, and the Ace Hardwares of the world, right? It's all coming from product producers from around the world, and we're pulling together the expertise. So that means we have to learn how to deal with multiple cultures, okay? And different work practices, different work beliefs. So getting a global mindset helps us. The idea of trust through experience. I had a question this morning about the Emirates. And I've frequented the Emirates, and basically the Emirates is a very safe place. But whenever you think of the word Middle East, everybody thinks of, you know, something bad or scary. Same thing with Africa, right? A lot of people have fears of Africa because of what you see on the news, which is another form of technology. And when we talk about social media in a few minutes, I'll share with you my thoughts on that. Tech transfer, and it's just a great learning opportunity. So for construction, the reason it's global is because of the shifting markets, right? Sort of back to the no planet, no work concept, right? We have to go where the work is in some cases. Some people have done it for the wrong reasons. They think they're chasing profitability, but they're basically, I mean, you have to follow some of your customers. The world is truly flat, and that means that if I'm not willing to go and export my expertise to work on other projects, somebody else certainly will. And as a matter of fact, they may impress that client so much that they take the work away from me right here in my own backyard. So it's a necessity. It's a necessity based on it. The other thing is following your competition. That may be a reason, you know, because I know people that compete, you know, for fun. I mean, they use each other as competitors because they leverage that to make constant improvement within the organizations, right? It's almost like, it's like when Michigan State, you know, beats up on Purdue in football, right? And then we always look forward to basketball because we have a better chance, right? But the idea is that rivalry can actually help drive improvements. That rivalry can actually help drive technology adoption. So, for example, at Purdue, if I need something, I always use reference to my peer institutions and their construction programs or their offices of globalization so that I can go to the provost. Hi, Mr. Provost. Arizona State, they just got this particular thing, and if we don't get it, our students are going to be, you know, further down the ladder because, like you said, the certification is what makes us become more employable, right? So it's a good way to actually spiral up both parties. So the idea of more market shares is always we have to be in business to make money, right? We just don't have to make a lot of money, we just have to make money, okay? And you can't use the technology of today and the nice copy machines, it just doesn't work. They got me at the airport with the bad money last time. Somebody didn't hear my joke. Okay, so I'm going to share with you an example of global exposure. George mentioned, here's my global footprint, and being a Virginia boy, I grew up in Virginia, Southwest Virginia, was born in Salem, which is right next to Roanoke. Roanoke made a big mistake several years ago, back in the late 60s when it was Piedmont Airlines before it was US Air. Piedmont Airlines asked Roanoke to expand the runway. And Roanoke said, no, we're not going to spend the money to expand the runway. Because it was the time when 81 was coming through and it was going to impede on 81. And so Piedmont just took their business 80 miles to the south to Charlotte. I mean, look at Charlotte now, right? So it's interesting. But being a guy from Southwest Virginia, grew up in Martinsville, famous for the racetrack. Yeah, we get to host 2 big events every year there. I never dreamed I would actually have been exposed to this kind of stuff. And I will tell you, it's been one of the driving forces for me to try to drag, and when I say drag, truly drag some of my industry partners to these markets overseas. But really, the biggest aha is trying to change the mindset of our young people. And they have to get a global exposure. So an interesting thing happened to me last spring when I was teaching the global concepts for construction, the basics of globalization for construction process. And there was about half master's students and about half undergraduate students in this class, okay? And so I got them to tell me everywhere they'd ever visited in an email. And then we mapped it. So you could actually see in that one classroom, there were 14 students. Here's what the global footprint looked like for them. Oh, and the black pegs, those are places I've been over a dozen times. China was my 23rd trip to Beijing in the last, since '94. But look at this, you see mine, and look at with the students. Okay? So, on our campus, in a classroom with 14 students, we've got all this global exposure right there at our fingertips, and we got to capitalize on it. Whether it's understanding culture or business practices, it's there. So that technology is called just face-to-face, social, right? Learning from one another. So one of the things that is our job is to actually make the world smaller, even though it's really, really small when you realize that you can get a phone call from anywhere. And I know it's really, really small when my mother, she turns 80 this month, she friended me on Facebook this week. And I was wondering if my brother and my sister-in-law had helped her get set up, but she did it herself on Facebook. So we Skype, and the world is smaller. There's such an ease of contact, right? Think about that. You know, I've had people laugh at me because as soon as I land wherever I am and I send a text to my wife to let her know I'm okay, colleagues with me that are senior than I am, and I'm not that young, but I look it. But anyway, the senior ones, they'll say, you know, I leave my wife, I kiss her at the door, and she hopes I get home in 2 weeks. And I said, but this is a whole new thing. Our whole expectations of communication have changed, right? So one of the things that we can really do is try to remove those obstacles. And a lot of those obstacles are misconceptions. A lot of those obstacles are actually created by the technology that we have and the social media that we have. So I'm going to badmouth social media a little bit later, okay? But we got to figure out how to do tech transfer and capitalize on our lessons. So, you know, I had to put in this is a Sean slide, the IT slide, okay? The ease of access to data has really had a direct impact on how we make decisions. Right? So we all have access now. It used to be we thought we had a competitive advantage because of what we knew in the industry. That's not it anymore because everybody, see the IT, everybody has access to almost the same set of information. It's what we do with the information. It's how we manage the information and how we share the information and make it effective, right? So I don't know if any of you have ever seen this from the World Bank, but doing business, this is one of the best resources. Doing business. Just go into Google and type doing business, World Bank. This comes up. It's a PDF file. Doing business basically has been published every year since 2003, and it basically talks about how economies have made reforms to encourage business investment. The key business investment is construction. So one of the things that they measure is how easy is it to get electricity? How easy is it to get a construction permit? How easy is it to start a business? Do you have to have a local partner, right? All of these things are reported, okay? And if you look at the bottom bullet there, since 2005, the largest share of improvements has come in sub-Saharan Africa because of all the people going there for investment reasons, okay? So it's an interesting thing. So I can share with you, you probably can't see that slide, but if you look at the top, Singapore's at the top, Hong Kong's second, New Zealand's third, United States is a steady fourth. I've also listed the worst ones, but we're not going to go there. But the idea is they have specific details on how to actually get started, what kind of business reforms they've made so that you're well aware of it, right? So easy way for us to globalize. And this is a way to expose our students to different business practices and different changes in regulatory environment. The other thing is there's another site called worldbusinessculture.com, okay? This is great. Everybody has access to it, right? If you go there, it tells you everything about those countries and what kind of business structures are common, what kind of management style they have, even dress code, how they handle meetings, do they work in teams, do they like to work as individuals, how women are treated in business, okay, which is very, very important, and how to entertain. And everybody knows in construction we have to entertain, right? So this is a great source. I highly recommend it. They're really in bits and pieces. They also have some good top 10 tips that if you're ever going to meet with someone from one of these countries or do business with them, it's a great way to, it's like the Cliff Notes, if you will. How many of you like Cliff Notes in college, right? I loved Cliff Notes, right? Actually, I had Robert's Notes most of the time. Anyway, back in 2008, one of my master's students did a study on the successful characteristics of U.S. firms getting into the Asian market. And if you'll notice, two of the top three had to deal with technology expertise and project management expertise, right? So if you think about tech transfer, you know, it's when you've got the technology and you're using it more effective than somebody else, or better than that, you figured out a different use of an existing technology to better enable you to meet people's needs, right? That's what technologists do, right? We're the applied side. We make things happen. So these were two of the top characteristics. So now we have to talk about technology. And you have to forgive me for having, I think that's supposed to be a Tyrannosaurus Rex, right? But technology, for some of us, is we're considered the dinosaurs of technology. Right? So that's where some of the humor comes in. So if you forgive me, think about the speed of computers today, right? So when I was a senior at Virginia Tech, 1984, was the first year we had PCs, right? And it was one of those boxes that, like that Commodore thing up there at the top, right? And I think it may have operated at 12 megahertz or something like that, right? So then when I went back to college to get my doctorate, I really upgraded. I got the Mac in a box, the Mac Classic, one with the happy Mac on the front. Every time you cut it on, it would ping and smile at you and all that, right? But the truth is, my watch has more capacity than those computers. Because this watch is a Casio. It's a ProTech. It's really cool. It's got an altimeter on it. It's got a compass in it, right? It's got a world time watch, all that kind of good stuff. You know, and things like this, you know, my new sustainable band that everybody got, right? This right here holds more than any of those computers. And by the way, you can actually access it instead of having to pull out the 5 1/4 floppy to slide it in, right? Those 5 1/4 floppies just wouldn't fit very well, right? But one of the things that I tell my students is that today people make mistakes 3,000 times faster than I ever did, right? But the truth is, you can find solutions 3,000 times faster because of all the big data that we are able to manage. We have an ongoing debate in our college about where big data belongs, because we have computer graphics, and we have computer and information technology in our college, and of course computer scientists think they own the big data, but nobody's willing to give it up because all of us use big data now, right? If you think about everything from BIM models to programming, to projections, to cost modeling, I mean, everything else, and even all the environmental modeling that we do, right? So, I like that. Now, this is a treat. We did try it out earlier and it worked, so hopefully it'll work now. Some of you will remember this.
When dialing, notice that I brought my finger around until it firmly touched the finger stop. And now I remove my finger. Now, soon after you dial the number you want, you will hear this tone. That's the ringing signal, an interrupted burring sound.
Okay? We've come a long way, right? To think that that's the burring sound, some of the most annoying phone rings now, just, you know, right? So anyway, think about that. That really wasn't that long ago, right? Look at this curve. And I wished I had a source to cite for this. This was given to me by a management advisory board colleague for eBuilder back in '97. But look at this. This is the adoption into households in the US for different technologies, right? If you look, there's electricity, and then there's phones, and then there's refrigerators, and you can see where the Great Depression happened. You can also see where every time we went to war, we saw big dips, right? So look at I think the last one there is the cell phone, right? The cell phone at that time was still, and now, where are we? Okay? Where are we? I've got a slide that tells you exactly how many devices they're projecting that we'll have by 2015, and where the market shares are going away from Samsung and Apple, by the way. Some of these upstart companies in China are basically doing it. So to reflect back on technology for a couple minutes, just bear with me. This is a study I did from '96 to '99, and it's only the highlights. This was about project management's adoption of technology and how much computer utilization we did. And it included global. We included people in Asia, Malaysia, and Singapore as part of this as well. But if you'll notice, we really didn't get frequency ratings for email at the time, but Excel was the big thing. And you know what? I think Excel still is, right? Because we've learned how to use it for the data side, okay? Not going to belabor the point. Look here. The most important applications. Finally, we started seeing where email was showing some presence. You know, this is on a scale of 5. I wasn't smart enough to use a 7-point scale. I used a 5-point Likert scale for this. But Excel was still charging along in 1999, okay? But email and AutoCAD, look at those. They're really not there, okay? So in 1999, 83% of the people that we involved in our survey, there's a couple hundred that responded, said that they had web pages, right? Web pages, and they were using it for public relations and blasting and things like that. So if you look at the network systems, they grew from 75% or 65% in 97 up to 85% in 99. So people didn't even have network systems, okay? And of course now with the cloud, I don't even know what you call it. I guess we'll ask them if they have cloud systems, okay? They were reporting that they were using Pentium processors. Wow, that's pretty amazing, isn't it? And they were using Windows, right? Think about it. When I talked about the first PCs, there wasn't a mouse, right? So the first AutoCAD exposure I had was telling it to plot X9 to G14 or something, and a line came across the screen. That was my first involvement of AutoCAD. And we thought, this will never take on, right? Right. Look at the average daily use of computers back then. Right? In 1999, 3.64 hours. How many of you work 3.64 hours on a computer? How many of you work 8 hours on a computer? Okay, at least. And based on that second or third slide I showed you, I would guarantee you because of technology and mobile devices, we're working 12 or 14 hours with them. And not even, it's part of it's subliminal, right? So let's look at some of their responses in 1999. The potential of the internet as a business tool is great. Okay? This was before people would even consider doing online banking. Right? I will never buy anything online. Don't trust it. Okay? The other thing is, down at in the blue, you say too much personal usage by employees and security issues. And the speed of transmission. You remember how, you got to remember, this is back when the phone, you've got mail, right? And you had to hear that we didn't have a burring sound, but we heard that thing trying to, log into a computer with we put the handset. I mean, come on. We really thought we were something. Right? So what was the hesitation in 99? Security was the big thing. Security's still the big thing. Right? But people have grown to trust it because we all have to be careful of identity theft and things like this. But I'm going to share something with you. Again, this is mostly my opinion. We're only keeping honest people honest. I mean, if somebody really wants to get your information, and right now, I think Sean has already got my credit card information off my phone by some kind of telepathy or something because I brought it in the room, right? So you're only keeping honest people honest. And knowing that everybody has access to the same information sort of drives some of it. And of course, everybody's worried about Y2K. All the computers are going to stop, right? Nothing's going to function. We're not going to be able to get gas, right? Didn't happen. So one of the things that has affected us is whether or not we're being pushed or pulled by the change process to adopt technology. Pushed is basically by, an external driver, whether it's competition or you're doing it because your owner is requiring you to do it. You're being pushed to do it. Basically, go all the way back to the survey I talked to you about just a few minutes ago, where I was talking about this, the perfect storm, and owners' expectations. And if owners are expecting you to be technically savvy and using all the new things, then you're going to do it. But you're going to actually try to figure out how to make that enable you to meet their needs. The other thing is being pulled. You can have great leadership. You can have people who said, this is where we need to be, this is the kind of technology that defines us, okay? They might want it because they want to continuously improve and they're kind of the challenge takers, so to speak, okay? But the question we have to ask ourselves is, do we want to be on the bleeding edge or the leading edge? Okay, and I had to borrow, that's, the cyborg, that's Schwarzenegger, right, when he was in Terminator 1. Now, would you rather have him, or would you rather have the iRobot that hung out with, what's his name? Will Smith, yeah, right? Both of them are great technology. This is one of the most critical decision points for companies to make, right? If you're going to be on the leading edge, you have to be willing to take a nick or two, right? I mean, it's just part of it. The ones that have been the best at adopting technology have done it without fear. They've done it without any kind of fear because they knew no matter what little bit of change was made and whatever headache they had, they were going to be better off on the other side. Okay? But deciding when and what to do is critical. So the idea of actually surrounding ourselves with tech-savvy people that can help us feel more comfortable with that technology change is critical. Okay? Remember the brick? All right, look at this. 1984, that phone cost $39.95. Okay? $39.95, and you got, what, half an hour talk time for 10 hours of charging? What's it take to charge a phone now? 15 minutes maybe with the new battery technologies and things like that? And it lasts, depending on what apps you're playing with and if you leave them on and all that kind of stuff, right? For a day, easily. But people stood in line to get this because it was technology. This was what created that problem world that we live in now. Instant access. All right. So I found this in the China Daily just 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago yesterday. Okay? It says by 2020 the world will have about 50 billion electronic devices. All of you got a brand new one today. Right? Which is a great idea. All right. It said in 2012 1.75 billion sets were sold. Samsung and Apple had 52% of that. What? 1.75 billion phones. Smartphones. It's crazy, right? But there's a company, Huawei, sold 27.2 million. Okay? This is a Chinese producer of the phones. Okay? They had a 73.8% increase since 2011. They have 140,000 employees in 40 countries. Have you ever heard of them? No. Right? Bigger, faster, cheaper. Right? They're getting them to the market. So how has the smartphone impacted construction management? There's been good impacts, but there's also been bad impacts. Used to be a worker, whether they were a supervisor or an hourly employee, they showed up at work. Hopefully they were at the workplace by 7:30, depending on when you started, and they worked till break time. They took their break and then they worked in the afternoon and went home. Nowadays, they even make the tool belts with the special cell phone pocket, right? So it has an effect on our daily performance at work because you can also get information throughout the day that can affect your performance, good or bad, right? But it also gives us instant access to the internet, right? We can answer emails, we can attach files on a mobile device. So it should make us more productive. It should. George is saying it should. But at the same time, it provides distractors for other employees. So if the device is being used for performance at work, it's great, right? But what this has done is because the 3,000 times faster, that also gives us instant connection to everybody else in our life, which it's a good thing, but it also can be an inhibitor for some. Where it's really impacted us is we have access to things like eBuilder or Buzzsaw or any of the internet-based portals. We can use our smartphone to access it, which is great, right? So it's been 18 years since the first Project Pacific website came out. All of our documents on one portal where everybody has access to it. That's the data thing. It's on the web where everybody has access to the same level of information. I can access it 24/7 from around the world. As a matter of fact, when I sent my slides to George, we had to use eBuilder. I put it in a folder so he could go get it because it was too big. I couldn't set up Dropbox in China for some reason. I couldn't access Facebook, right? So anyway, moving on. So now, accessibility 24/7 to the documents. So I'm sure you've heard of a project-specific website. I use this portal, I use eBuilder for the last, since it came out. One of my students from Florida was the founder of eBuilder. And so we use it as our capstone. It's where we put all the documents, our competition teams use it, all of our documents are shared. It gives a great access. You can control the people who have, you can set up different firewalls. So you can set it to where people can either read or they can actually manipulate, you can upload, all those great things. The people that were so hesitant at the beginning of this were the architects and engineers. They were afraid to share their design documents. But then once they realized that we have tracking devices that tell you exactly what everybody's done, whether they've read them, they've downloaded them, or marked them up, then they basically started feeling more secure about sharing it. They started trusting us more. Okay, so when we did that study back in '97, the internet was only ranking 2.5 out of 5 of importance to them doing their daily work. It ranked 7th in most important. And nowadays, without the internet, I mean, if you don't have internet access, what do people say? We go home, right? It used to be I'd send people home when they built a fire because I told them it's too cold to work, right? If you build a fire, that means you're going to spend more time next to the fire. Well, the internet's down. People, they're incapacitated. Is that true? If the internet doesn't work? What can we do if the internet goes away? Can we revert back to what we used to do? Think about construction, how hard it's been for us to change. It takes years to change, right? Drive out the fear. I should have had this slide earlier. Okay? So for owners, they've been concerned about communications, maintaining oversight, access to information, and so they've really pushed a lot of this. So here's how we've had the greatest impacts, and I know I'm running short on time, so I'm going to fast forward through some of these. Improved communication. These portals have improved communication mainly because we're given open access to the information 24/7, and we're not deciding on which information they need. We're letting people decide what information they need to make their decisions so that they can do their jobs. Works virtual. You know, if you look at all the aspects of internet-based management systems, it's truly a virtual office. And it's creating, you know, I don't have to be on the internet. I can get an instant notification via email. And nowadays with cellular-driven email, that means the internet can go down and I still get my email, right? Consistent process. It helps us to standardize, okay? Repetition helps that. Makes it where we can improve things. Speed. Remember the 3,000 times faster? The other thing is once the information is there, then you have the leverage point to say, look, it's been there for 2 days and you haven't done anything with it. What's the problem? Don't tell me you don't have access to the information you need to do your job. We put it out there for you already. Information management, we talked about this. Lets the information user decide what information they want to get, right? It's kind of like when somebody sends you that link, says this is a real interesting article. They don't tell you anything about what the article is. That's great. So when you click on it and you read it, you may see 5 things in it that you really picked up on, and they saw 5 completely different things. But it's us using the information the way we want to, which helps us. Accountability. Because we've got all these different tracking systems on websites for our portals, we can see who's holding up progress. We gave you access to the information. We answered your question. You got the updated drawings. You got the updated cost estimate 3 days ago. Why haven't you answered me? The beauty of this is just like Adobe Connect and some other things where you create these automatic URLs where we can go back in time and see things again. That's what makes the audit trail so good. You got a document history. And the other thing is I can log in once, manage multiple projects all over the world. I don't have to do all these different entries into it. So the other thing is you get everybody's input on revisions. You can actually do full collaborative design changes. You can get feedback on systems. You can track when decisions were made and why they were made at that particular time, because it was based on the decisions that are based on the information we had at that time. So it can actually help us go back in time and figure out why things were done the way they were. And it also provides us a platform for operations, maintenance, and the next life of the facility. So I'm going to pass this. You have access to all these things. The big thing I think about project-specific website is, since you don't have to have the native software, I mean, because it'll automatically convert to PDF so you can actually view things, so you don't have to have whatever they created it in. But the other thing is, it reduces litigation, because the key to litigation is, I think I know something that the other party doesn't. And now everybody has a single point of data, or all the documents, and we all know that you know what I know. So that means that how can we ever have a legal battle, because there's no secret, there's no hidden agenda there. So let's talk a little bit about BIM. BIM's big on the rise, right? So we're up to about 71% adoption now. That's a big jump from 28% just 5 years ago, 6 years ago. All right, BIM's being used a lot, okay? But there's qualifying claims about BIM. You know, we used to say we were safety conscious, we're a TQM firm. Now people say we're BIMers, and so we have to figure out a standard for comparison of BIM. And I've got a PhD student who's created a BIMM, Building Information Modeling Maturity Index, because some people look at BIM as a technology. Some people believe BIM is a process. Some people think BIM is a policy, and like how we do our rules of engagement. And so what we've done is we've created this, how well it's defined, how well it's managed, how well it's integrated, and how well it's optimized in a company. So we're creating a BIM score. And we've had over 500 people involved in our data collection that are BIM experts. And we've had practitioners as well as academicians. The academicians, majority of them had work experience and have BIM expertise area in their research. And so basically, these are the top areas: interoperability, information accuracy, the assurance of the information, the delivery method, and standards are the top 5 there. And then when we actually compared US to non-US, for US, it was information delivery, was how fast basically I can get the information. Whereas if you go outside the US, it was the team structure, how the BIM modeling forced a team environment, a collaborative system. That was the most important to them. So that's an interesting preliminary finding. You can look forward to seeing the final thing. She defends next month. We'll keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully she's finished. So BIM and collaboration, which is one of the things I wanted to talk about with the trust, and I got a slide coming up. You know, if you look at BIM, everybody's needed to make the BIM model work, right? And of course, there's been big debate over who owns BIM and all that kind of stuff. But the fact is, it's clearly a way for us. It's a philosophy. It's a business philosophy, because it makes us all share things and work together on a single virtual building. So this trust pyramid is something that deals with collaboration, global collaboration. And I see BIM basically spanning this whole trust pyramid. Basically, people's past experiences drive whether or not they trust somebody. And the second thing is they look at somebody and say, you know, do they have the ability or the capacity to work with me? Are they open, right? Do they have any kind of bad intentions? Do they have integrity? And what are the risks? And there's risk in everything, right? So when we ask somebody, can we trust them? The real thing is, can we trust them to do what? Right? Because saying and doing equals trust, right? If George said he was going to take me to dinner last night, and he did. So I can trust George, right? The construction industry's been the same way. But it used to be we could do construction on a handshake, right? And there's still people who would like to be that way. But of course, with the environment we're in, we can't. Saying and doing equals trust. So where does BIM fit into this, okay? Because the way the trust cycle works is I make promises, owner's expectations. I start taking action. My outcomes start to become something, a building in place. They get compared back to the expectations. and then I make more, I keep correcting this, right, as we keep going around the circle, right? For an owner, where BIM fits in is I can really see what I'm going to get before I buy it. Okay? The other thing with BIM, and this is the follow-on study, is on how BIM affects trust. The other thing is, does that mean that they're going to trust me more because they can actually see it virtually and it meets their expectations? Or, if we see we get off track and we got to come back and manage those expectations again, can I use the BIM technology and all that 3,000 times faster than 1984 to reassure my customers, right? I see there's a direct impact there with BIM. Because first of all, we're not going to start without them saying, yes, that's what I want, okay? So a couple of things to ask you about is collaboration driven by crisis? Back to when I talked about the first bomb, right? Is collaboration driven by survival? In some cases, we got to learn to collaborate just to stay in business, right? And is innovation and tech transfer a result or a means of globalization? Just food for thought. So a couple of the technology enablers we talked about. Open access to intellectual property. If you think about the gamers, and you think about the MOOCs, and you think about sharewares and apps, okay? The gamers, they'll share their intellectual property just because they all want to make the game better. They have the best system in the world. Everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, the majority of the world doesn't want to share intellectual property. Why? Because they want to make money off of it, right? If we're really trying to do something better, maybe money's not the thing to do it, right? Maybe the idea is if I can share it just to improve the environment, just to improve the process, am I still going to get profit from that? Right? Because especially if we let somebody leapfrog us, because then we're going to be able to get even more technology. So we're going to talk about sustainability. Everybody knows what sustainability is, and I just wanted to highlight some of the things at this conference I thought were great, right? Less handouts. We don't need paper, right? We can live with electronic devices. The tablet, I think, is a wonderful idea. The eco-friendly lodging, the shuttle, all of that kind of stuff. I haven't seen the 4 electric vehicle charging stations. I'll have to look at that. And this, of course, is a LEED certified facility. Sustainability, thinking about the impacts that we have. Okay? Some of the technologies we've already talked about. BIM has a major sustainability impact. We can make revisions. We don't have to print all these pieces of paper, right? We still have documents in the field, no doubt, right? Wireless sensor networks are making a big impact on how we do building system controls. We got smart homes, we got smart grids, we got automated controls, right? We got voice-activated things now. I saw the outside about is your room's too cold, too hot, right? Those kind of things. It's all with technology. The other thing is it allows us to model and do life cycle cost analysis way beyond our means before. So one thing I wanted to add to this is, to me, sustainable means it has to include human resources too, right? All the other side, all the natural resources, they're there. Time, money, and people are also something we have to concern ourselves with respect to sustainability. So a couple of things that I would like to just highlight here as we're running out of time is we really have to figure out how we enable champions for leading sustained responses. It's not going to be the technology, it's going to be the people driving the process. So how we plant that sustainable seed, how we enable them with technology to do it, right? So it's the human resource that I think is the key to that, because it's going to lead to innovation, right? So we already talked about the sustainable future. No planet, no job, right? So we want to increase our efficiencies of operation, and sometimes that's just getting people to work better together. That's a sustainable solution, right? To me, sharing IP is a sustainable solution, right? Figuring out how we make money off the IP is something later. The other thing is, if we openly share information, then that means that somebody else is going to be able to make a better step function improvement. Or if we share our failures, that means that we may actually be able to take those failures and apply them somewhere else and it work, right? Because there's a lot of different complexities that can change the way things actually fall out. So I'm going to pass on this. I want you to think about what people can do together. Do you welcome people to your team that know more than you do? Okay? I've worked with people that they steered clear away from anybody that brought anything to the team more than them. They are failures. They are big failures because they're never going to create the team concept that is going to work. Okay? Real quickly about social media. IT and social media, how does it impact people's global perceptions? Okay? All of these different things. Remember the thing I said before? We have to make decisions based on facts and not opinions. A lot of what we see or hear on the media is just one snippet. And people make grand decisions based on snippets and not all of the information. I mean, I hope nobody hears from the news media, but news media has to create, loyalty, viewers. So if they're reporting the full picture, not just one piece of it, that's going to get people to watch, it can be very, very depressing watching CNN, or Fox or any of these. So we have to, while we're open to all these different technologies and it's available to us, we have to get people to understand that oftentimes it's one perspective and it's not all the facts, because it does change people's perception. Okay? How has Skype changed the perception of the world? Skype has made the world that much smaller. Okay, I told you about my 80-year-old mother. So when I'm traveling all over the world, she'll either call me or we'll Skype. It's much cheaper to Skype, right? So we'll Skype. That's changed our perception of the world because it's not like you wait 3 weeks for a letter, right? It's changed the way we interact. We have students defending, global, interdisciplinary master's degrees via Skype or Adobe Connect. We have meetings on Skype. It used to be we had to go, we have to schedule a teleconference room. We'll schedule a Skype meeting, and it works. Okay? How's Facebook changed your perception of the world? Facebook, in my opinion, this is my opinion, some people just share too much information. Right? But if you remember, Facebook is what drove a lot of the change in the Arab Spring, right? Because people had access to information, they used it for a different thing. But it certainly changes our perception of the world. Okay? One of the things is, all of this can actually help us create innovations. Because the more if people are willing to share some of the information they share on Facebook, I guarantee you those are the same people that are willing to share their IP. Right? Because they're open. They're used to sharing things. I already talked about the gaming industry. So one of the things that we have to do is we got to encourage innovation. We got to learn how to share lessons learned. Based on what I've said, you probably realize I don't think intellectual property is worth anything unless you share it. And I have universities and intellectual property, that's always the biggest issue when we deal with global collaboration, is who's going to own the IP, right? If the IP betters the world, then why not just do that? We got to be able to embrace change. Remember, you don't want to be the Arnold Schwarzenegger. You want to be the iRobot if you're going to be the leading edge. We got to remove barriers. We got to drive out fears. Okay? Trust is a key word there. So here's a couple of things I'll share with you. This is a dissonance factor theory. I did a lot of study of self-management and self-managed work teams. And in dissonance factor, there's 3 things we have to do in our life. The things that we want to do, the things that we have to do, and the third thing is what we're capable of doing. Okay? Anytime you try to put somebody in a situation that they don't want to do, but you make them do it, and the reason they don't want to do it is because they don't have the capacity, you got a problem. These circles never touch. Okay? So part of the capacity comes from technology enabled, but we can't just give people technology. We have to train them. So what happens oftentimes, especially in our industry, is we get this technology, we get this new update, and then we just put it out there and don't give the time for people to learn how to use it, which makes it a problem. So basically, You have conflict between these circles. And you can use these 3 circles to manage your whole life, by the way, because if you can figure out what people want to do, make them capable of doing it, and then make it their job responsibility, then you have a happy person. So I really like to call them the 3 circles of joy. And the more you can get your 3 circles to overlap, the happier you're going to be. And I did get finished before 9:50. Thank you. There's my email address. I think it's a great opportunity to be here with you and share. And thank you for your time. And I answered the question already since I know we're out of time. Thank you. All right.